Hi, my name's Dr Adam Booth and this is another locked down edition of Quantum Source. Now during a lockdown it's pretty easy to feel a bit lackluster and stir crazy, but take a look outside of the window. There's plenty of life going on out there, things are bursting back into bloom, there's plenty of life going on in my windowsill. I'm going to show you on the old phone cam. So what have we got here? We've got tomatoes, we've got a couple of beans coming there, more tomatoes, I quite like tomatoes, some lettuces there, there's some courgettes, there's a, well, you can't have it all, there's a cactus that's been in the process of dying for the last 2 years, but plenty of life going on in this room, which is really cool. And it's got to be worth celebrating, and there's plenty of religions that celebrate around this time of year. And our speaker today is an expert in exactly that. She's Dr Angela Puca. She is a researcher in theology in the School of Arts and Communications at Leeds Trinity University. We're going to be giving her a call in just a few seconds, but one of the philosophies behind Quantum Source was that fascinating facts are always served best with something refreshing, and so the recommended source for this, time to celebrate, let's get the Prosecco out. I'm actually not going to pop this just yet because if I pop it without Jane around to share it, she might be a bit annoyed with me. But you get yourself a glass of something, we'll give Angela a call, and I'll see you in a minute. Cheers. And hello Angela, there you are. How are you doing?
I'm okay, thank you. How are you, Adam?
I'm all right. It's getting a bit warm in my makeshift office. I can really feel that spring has sprung, and I could do with a refreshing drink. So can you recommend me a sauce?
Well, I guess I would recommend you the forbidden sauce, seasoned by some esotericism.
Okay, right. So
Yeah.
anything dark and mystical?
Yeah, some Italian spirits.
Okay, very nice.
Perhaps of the healing kind might be handy at the moment.
Absolutely, yeah. We all need it. So it's obviously getting warm in my room here because spring has sprung, and that's got to be worth celebrating, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and for the pagans, that would be a celebration of spring, of the spring equinox, even though we have sort of already kind of passed that time of the year, but we are still in the springtime, we can say so.
That's right. Now, I should say that we're recording this on the 16th of April. You were originally scheduled to give an official Quantum Source on the 17th of April, so this is also really good timing. Let's get your screen shared, and then we can hear what you've got to say.
So today I'd like to speak to you about the spring equinox in paganism and how pagans celebrate the spring equinox. In order to explain this, of course, I would have to give you an overview on paganism and what are the pagan Sabbaths, because the spring equinox is one of the 8 festivals in the pagan year. So let's start with what is paganism, since your audience might not be familiar with this religious movement. Some call it neo-paganism and some other call it paganism because it is a new religious movement, although some may argue that it really isn't, and we will see just in a second why. But let's stick with the term paganism because that's what the English native speakers prefer when they refer to themselves, the practitioners. That's the term they prefer to use. So paganism, according to the Pagan Federation International, is a polytheistic and pantheistic nature-worshipping religion. So what is polytheism? Polytheism is the belief and the worship of multiple gods. But it is important to highlight that for pagans, the conceptualization of the gods is very much different from the way the God is conceptualized in monotheisms. So in monotheisms, there's the idea of one God creator, whereas for pagans, the gods are either entities which live in a different realm of reality, which communicates with our realm of reality, or they may be even seen as metaphors or as archetypes. Pantheistic. What is pantheism? Pantheism is the belief that the divine is in everything that lives. And so it is, in technical terms, it is a form of immanentistic view of the divine. So the divine is in nature, is embedded in nature, is not outside, is not a transcendental being. Nature worshipping is pretty much self-explanatory. So these are religious movements that worship nature and the cycles of nature. So they are based on pre-Christian religions, even the forms of paganism which are of recent born, like Wicca, for example, which is the most popular form of paganism. They tend to be based on pre-Christian beliefs and pre-Christian mythologies. There was a revival and a reappropriation of the term paganism during the Renaissance, and there are quite a few accounts of this, especially from the Italian Renaissance. Also, paganism lives a rebirth from the 1950s, thanks to the Wiccan tradition, which was born in Britain, actually in England. And basically they popularized worldwide paganism. And even though, of course, we cannot say that the majority of pagans around the world are Wiccans, Wicca does have has had a massive impact in the popularization and in the spreading of paganism worldwide.
Okay.
So the common principles in paganism are the love and communion with nature. As I just said, it is a nature-worshipping religion, so it is really focused around nature and worship of nature. Also, there is a respect and reverence towards the eternal cycle of death and rebirth, which is present in our lives, and it is manifested in a cyclical manner in nature, in the seasonal changes. Also, there is an ethic that recognizes the individual responsibility. So you don't have gods that will punish you, or you don't have a reward in the afterlife. It is mainly based on a personal, individual ethics. And also, there is a recognition of the divine in both the male and female aspects. So in paganism, you have both goddesses and gods. And some pagans say that all goddesses are somewhat a manifestation of one goddess, which means the female principle in nature, everything that is receptive and creative. Whereas all the gods are a manifestation of one god, which would mean the male principle, the projective principle, the sun, which is in everything that lives and that we experience as people living on the earth with the seasonal changes. Now let's go on to Wicca. So as we said, Wicca was extremely important in the spreading of paganism worldwide because it popularized paganism as a religion and its principles. And even though we cannot see that the majority of pagans are Wiccans, still eclectic pagans, which are I'd say the majority of pagans, tend to be very influenced by everything that has been set out by Wicca. So Wicca has sort of laid out the foundations for eclectic pagans to take inspiration from, we may say. So Wicca is kind of a continuation and an evolution based on 19th century Hermetic societies, like, for example, forms of ceremonial magic, like the ones we find with the Ordo Templi Orientis and the Order of the Golden Dawn. And in the 1950s, Gerald Gardner, who was an Englishman, he decided to found this new religious movement. Actually, he claimed that it was an old religious movement, which he was just sort of uncovering, but he was part of this lineage that went back to that went back for centuries and centuries. And yeah, he claimed that that was the case. And so he said that this practice, the religion of witchcraft, was called Wicca, because he claimed that basically the word Wicca is the ancient Anglo-Saxon word for witch. And so that Wicca was basically the religion of witchcraft, which had survived through the ages, and that was still present and quite lively in the 1950s when he brought it to the light. In the 1970s, Wicca spreads in the United States, and there are other authors who sort of changed Wicca and made it into a less ceremonial tradition and more open to individually tailored practices. And so we may say that at the moment, worldwide, Wiccans tend to be at large mostly eclectic practitioners who individually tailor the practice based upon some aspects laid out by Gardner, but also sort of reshaping it depending on their own belief system and their own practices. So now let's move on to explain what the solar seasonal cycle is. Although we may say and we may see that some of these celebrations were present in pre-Christian times across different parts of the world and across different religious traditions, the way the wheel of the year and the solar seasonal cycle has been laid out is mainly Wiccan. So some of these celebrations, for example, were found in ancient Rome as well, but the mythology that has been created and the systematization in 8 festivals on that specific times of the year was laid out by the Wiccan tradition. And now more or less all pagans follow this kind of layout. So these are the solar festivals. So these are the festivals based on the movements of the sun. There are also lunar festivals, which are based on the moon. And these are called Esbat, and they are the celebrations of the full moon. So it's 13 full moons for each year. Whereas in this case, it is 8 solar festivals. And they are the equinoxes, the solstices, and the midpoints in between. So we have, and basically, according to this mythology that has been laid out, the wheel of the year, it is all based on how the sun changes in relation to the earth. So we have the equinoxes, which celebrate the harmony and the balance between the sun and the moon, between the night and the day. And we have the solstices, which celebrate either the birth of the sun, the new birth of the sun with the winter solstice, or the death of the sun, which is celebrated when just before we approach the winter solstice, where the sun is born again. So it is a mythological construction of how the seasonal changes happen in relation to the movements of the sun. And the sun is perceived as a male god which is in constant change, and it is in a constant relation with the goddess, which is the female principle. So the female principle may either be the moon or the earth. So, for example, the Beltane, which is on the 1st of May, is the celebration of the marriage between the earth and the sun. So the goddess and the god get united, and it is time to celebrate fertility. And because it was also the time where everything in nature was sort of mating and producing new life. Yeah. So each of these celebration is focused on acknowledging what is happening on the earth, the movement of the sun, and also a mythological interpretation of what this means for us as human beings. So when for example, on the winter solstice, when we are celebrating the rebirth of the sun, it is a time where pagans get in tune with the seasonal change and with the darkness that is surrounding them. It is the darkest day of the year, and it is also a time to reflect upon the light that needs to come from within in order to get a rebirth. So basically the idea is that what is happening outside, it's sort of mirroring the seasonal changes that we live within. So when we get in tune with what is happening in nature, we are in a more balanced state, according to pagans, because of course it is a nature worshipping religion. So getting attuned with nature and the seasonal changes happening in nature makes you acknowledge the inner seasonal changes within ourselves. Does it make sense?
It makes really good sense, and it sounds like great life lessons anyway.
So moving on to the spring equinox, I needed to give an overview, otherwise it would have just been out of nowhere.
Sure.
So another thing that I didn't mention is that most of the names of these 8 festivals are drawn from Celtic or Anglo-Saxon gods. And of course, I don't have time to go deep into each and every festival, so I will be focusing on Ostara or the spring equinox. So Ostara is a celebration named after Eostre, which is an Anglo-Saxon goddess of spring and rebirth. And the celebration of Ostara is a celebration which focuses around the rebirth and resurrection of nature. And the goddess and god are represented as the maiden and the hunter, or alternatively as the green man and Mother Earth. And the picture here is taken from a ritual which I participated to. As you know, I do ethnographic research with participant observation. So this was taken in Naples at a spring equinox celebration by a group of pagans. So the celebrations center around the ideas of birth and rebirth, revealing the life force that has always been there, but it was just concealed by the winter's cloak. So it's like saying it seemed like everything had died out, but actually everything was just about to get rebirth under the surface. And examples of celebrations that happen during the spring equinox are planting seeds or painting eggs or egg hunting. So normally the solar celebrations for pagans, the Sabbaths, tend to be focused around getting in tune with the seasonal change. Although there are some pagans who also perform magical practices, but usually the moon celebrations, the Esbats, which happen every full moon of each month, they tend to be more focused around magical workings, whereas the Sabbats tend to be normally gatherings of pagans who get together and celebrate in order to get in tune with what is happening in nature, to get also in line with the seasonal changes which are happening within us. So in rituals, there are always, usually there's a mimesis of the dynamics carried out by the male and female principles in nature. So for example, since the spring equinox is a time of balance, being an equinox is one of those 2 points in the year where the sun and the moon, well, the light and the dark are in perfect balance on the earth. And so this is mirrored by how the goddess and the god interact. So often in rituals, pagans represent this balance which is happening between dark and light, showing a form of balance, a form of, in this case with spring equinox, a form of courting between the god which is represented, embodied by the priest, and the goddess which is embodied by the priestess. So they tend to, for example, one of the celebrations I attended to, they were sort of dancing in a very balanced way and sort of portraying a form of courting each other. They in the next festivals they will be united, and so it is sort of the what happens before the courting phase. Yeah, and also, for example, another ritual I attended to, there was the priestess who was embodying Mother Nature, and there were the 4 elements which were represented by 4 participants, and the goddess was the priestess, sorry, representing the goddess was moving clockwise, and every element was giving her something to put on her. It was like all the elements were dressing Mother Earth so that she could be flourishing again and show to the world and to human beings that she's alive and she's getting reborn. Also, another thing which is important to point out is that there are different mythologies which are followed by different pagan traditions, because of course paganism is an umbrella term, but you have lots and lots of traditions falling under this umbrella. So depending on the tradition, they may follow a different mythology, like a Celtic mythology or a German mythology. In Italy, for example, they tend to follow the Roman mythology or the Greek, for example. I come from the south of Italy, so I'm most familiar with the way pagans in the south of Italy celebrate these kind of festivities, and they tend to use a lot of mythology borrowed by the Roman and the Greek times. So, for example, the spring equinox would be a time for them to manifest and show the myth of Persephone and Demeter. Do you know the myth?
I don't know I know the names. I don't know the myth.
Well, basically, it is a myth which is connected to the spring equinox. That's why they utilize it for the rituals. So the ritual is sort of shaped around this myth. The myth is that Persephone was the daughter of Demeter, and she was kidnapped by Hades.
Okay.
and basically drawn to the underground, to the underground world. And she was made eat the pomegranate, but she only ate half of it. The pomegranate in the Roman and Greek mythology is a fruit that will bind you to the underworld once you have eaten it. Since Persephone was kidnapped against her will, her mother was really upset. Demeter was the goddess of spring and fertility and agriculture. And according to the myth, she used to provide human beings with a whole year of abundance and fruit and vegetables flourishing everywhere. But once her daughter was kidnapped and brought to the underworld, she was so sad that she wasn't able to, she didn't want to, she refused to give this abundance to humankind. And so basically Zeus mediated this dispute between Demeter and Hades. And since luckily Persephone only ate half of the pomegranate, they decided that she would stay in the underworld for half a year, and for the other half of the year she would be in our world, in the world of the living. And that's the time when Demeter would give us human beings the abundance of nature and fruits and vegetables. And so this is the myth that it is followed by a few pagans in Italy. Okay. So they tend to mirror this story in their ritual. There's sort of a mimesis of this kind of myth and this kind of stories in their rituals, so that they kind of embody that those archetypes. And by embodying those archetypes, they get in line with the seasonal change.
Cool.
That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And yeah, I guess that's all I wanted to say. But I look forward to questions. I just left here a few readings for.
All right, thanks very much, Angela. It was really interesting and really good fun talk. Thanks very much. I did have one question, if I may, and that's that when you talk about these kind of like Saxon origins of the names, you got the word like Ostara and Estre, and I can't help but notice the similarity to the word Easter, and then some of the, painting eggs and, doing things with eggs. It sounds like Easter. So how much overlap do you think there actually is, or is it just a coincidence that we've got these two similar sounding festivals at the same time?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't think it's a coincidence. Of course, most pagans believe that basically most of the Christian festivities are actually a reinterpretation of, or even an appropriation, some may say, of pagan festivals.
Okay.
Even with Christmas, for example, it is celebrated around the winter, around the winter solstice, and it is focused around the rebirth of the god. So yeah, pagans do believe that Christian festivities have borrowed or even appropriated from pagan festivals and even pagan traditions, like, for example, the painting of eggs.
Right, yeah.
The symbologies, even like the Christmas tree, for example.
Yeah.
And yeah, in the main Christian festivities, you will find lots and lots of elements which were found in pagan pre-Christian festivals.
Okay. Right, I would say to anyone watching this that if they've got questions for Angela, then Angela can be found at Instagram. If you look up Angela Symposium, I think was your account. Cool. And Angela also has an extensive YouTube archive of discussions and all things pagan. So check that out as well. Yeah, so I would invite anyone to get in touch with Angela.
Thank you. I hope you really liked it, and I'm really happy you invited me. So thanks for having me here.
No problem. And thanks very much to you for being here today. So great. Take care, and we'll speak to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So I don't know about you there, but I've got a real warm and fuzzy feeling after that one. It's kind of like really life-affirming that everything's going to be okay. We will get through this lockdown. Now, when we are through this lockdown, Angela has promised to come back to real-world Quantum Source at whatever pagan festival is going on at the time. She's going to give us something of a live demo with some audience participation, so keep your eyes peeled. As we say, she does have her YouTube channel, Angela Symposium. You can reach her through Instagram as well. And while you're there, keep your eyes out on the Quantum Source account. We will be uploading more videos, and we will be keeping you entertained and educated during this lockdown period. So that's about it for this one. I've been Adam Booth. You've been great. This has been Quantum Source. See you around.